The city skyline was poised for transformation. Plot 42, a prime piece of real estate nestled in the heart of the metropolis, had been earmarked for a monumental project, a high-rise commercial tower that promised to redefine the urban landscape. The responsibility for bringing this vision to life rested with Urban Line Constructions, a company renowned for its ambitious projects and uncompromising standards. At the helm was Junaid Khan, the CEO of Urban Line Constructions. A man in his early 40s, Junaid was the epitome of corporate success. His sharp suits, meticulous grooming, and authoritative demeanor commanded respect. Having invested millions into the project, he was determined to see it completed ahead of schedule, setting a new benchmark in the construction industry. On the ground, overseeing the day-to-day operations, was Anger. Riaz Malik, a seasoned professional with decades of experience in the field. In his late 50s, Riaz was a stark contrast to Junaid. Clad in a hard hat and reflective vest, his hands bore the calluses of years spent on construction sites. He valued safety and precision over speed, believing that a solid foundation was paramount to any structure's longevity. From the outset, tension simmered between the two. Junaid's relentless push for rapid progress often clashed with Riaz's cautious approach. The CEO's frequent visits to the site were marked by terse exchanges and veiled criticisms. Riaz, for his part, remained steadfast, prioritizing the well-being of his crew and the integrity of the construction process. The initial phases of the project progressed under this strained dynamic. Excavation work commenced, and the foundation began to take shape. However, unforeseen challenges soon emerged. Delays in the delivery of steel reinforcements, coupled with unexpected underground water channels, threatened to derail the timeline. Junaid's frustration grew palpable. He convened impromptu meetings, demanding explanations and pressing for solutions. Riaz, maintaining his composure, presented detailed reports and proposed adjustments to the schedule. Yet, the CEO's impatience overshadowed these efforts, leading to further discord. The construction site became a microcosm of their conflicting ideologies. Workers sensed the underlying tension, which began to affect morale. Some tasks were rushed under pressure, resulting in minor errors that required rework, further exacerbating delays. As the weeks progressed, the situation reached a boiling point. During a routine inspection, Junaid confronted Riaz over the slow pace of work. Voices were raised, and the exchange drew the attention of the entire crew. The confrontation underscored the growing chasm between corporate ambition and on-the-ground realities. Despite the challenges, the project continued. Both men, driven by their respective convictions, remained committed to their roles. The foundation was eventually completed, symbolizing not just the physical base of the tower but also the complex interplay of vision, execution, and human dynamics. The construction site, once buzzing with confident purpose, had begun to falter under the relentless pressure of time and nature's whims. What started as minor setbacks soon escalated into serious delays that threatened the entire project. The foundation pit, crucial to the stability of the new building, was inundated by unexpected heavy rains that turned the earth into a muddy swamp, swallowing equipment and halting all progress. Deliveries that had once arrived like clockwork were now staggered and inconsistent. The steel beams, vital to the skeletal framework, were delayed by logistical snags and supplier shortages, throwing the carefully calibrated schedule into chaos. The workers, a hardy group accustomed to the grit and grind of construction life, found themselves pushed to the brink, pulling exhausting overtime to make up for lost hours. Yet, no matter how hard they toiled under the gray skies, the pace lagged behind the firm deadlines imposed by the investors and board members waiting impatiently for results. One bleak afternoon, as the drizzle settled into a persistent drizzle, Junaid, the CEO known for his ruthless efficiency and sharp temper, arrived at the site unannounced. His polished shoes, incongruous against the dirt and grime, barely brushed the muddy ground before his voice cut through the air like a whip. "What's going on here?" he barked, storming toward the foreman's hut with an urgency that brooked no delay. Riaz, the project manager and a man who had weathered many storms in his career, was already waiting near the makeshift office with his clipboard in hand, his face lined with exhaustion but calm under pressure. As Junaid's fury spilled over in a torrent of accusations about lost time and wasted money, Riaz opened his mouth to explain the factors out of their control: the rains, the delayed deliveries, the relentless challenges that no manager could predict perfectly. But Junaid was relentless, cutting him off mid-sentence with a harsh retort about the financial hemorrhage the delays were causing. The exchange quickly escalated. "You're losing me money every hour this stands still," Junaid shouted, his eyes flashing with frustration and impatience. Riaz's reply was swift and sharp, born out of his own fear and sense of responsibility. "And you'll lose more if someone dies from rushing the job." His voice rose, echoing across the site as workers paused their labor, their tools in midair, sensing the tension crackling between the two men. The argument spiraled into a heated confrontation, voices raised and tempers flaring. The workers gathered near the edge of the pit watched in uneasy silence, the weight of the conflict heavier than the clouds overhead. The air seemed charged with more than just weather, it held the fragile balance between safety and speed, between leadership and recklessness. Meanwhile, the report books, meant to be objective records of progress and setbacks, sat open on the table, pages fluttering in the gusts of wind, bearing silent witness to the unraveling harmony of the project. As the shouting match wore on, Riaz's eyes locked on the faces of the crew around them, men and women who relied on his decisions for their livelihoods and safety. The realization struck him hard. This was no longer just a battle of wills between two leaders, but a crucible testing the very soul of the project. He knew that pushing the workers harder could endanger lives, but failing to meet deadlines could ruin his career and the company's future. The dilemma was brutal and unforgiving. Sensing the futility of continuing the fight in front of the crew, Riaz took a deep breath, lowering his voice but keeping the edge of firmness. "Junaid, I need you to understand, we cannot cut corners here. We have to fix the drainage, reschedule deliveries, and adjust expectations. Otherwise, we'll pay a much higher price than money." Junaid's scowl deepened, but the fire in Riaz's eyes was unmistakable. For a tense moment, the CEO's anger wavered against the weight of the manager's resolve. Then, with a sharp nod, Junaid motioned for the workers to resume. The men and women exchanged glances and murmurs, the tension lingering like a storm cloud still waiting to burst. As the site slowly returned to its rhythm, both men knew this confrontation was just the beginning. A crack had appeared not just in the foundation pit, but in their professional relationship, and in the fragile project hanging by a thread. Chapter 1: The Rift. Junaid Malik, the ambitious CEO of Skyline Constructions, prided himself on efficiency and results. Under his leadership, the company had grown rapidly, winning high-profile contracts that promised to transform the city skyline. Yet the biggest project of all, a sprawling commercial complex in the heart of the city, was on the brink of collapse, not because of financial woes or technical failures, but due to a brewing conflict between him and his site manager, Riaz Khan. Riaz was everything Junaid was not: meticulous, cautious, and an old-school craftsman who had risen through the ranks. To Junaid, Riaz's slow, measured approach seemed like unnecessary delay, an obstacle in the fast lane to completion. But Riaz saw danger in the rushed plans that Junaid pushed, warning of compromised safety and unstable foundations. Their disagreements, initially professional, soon turned personal, erupting into heated arguments witnessed by the staff and threatening the morale of the entire crew. The final straw came when Junaid publicly reprimanded Riaz during a site inspection, accusing him of laziness and incompetence. Riaz fired back, calling Junaid reckless and disconnected from the realities on the ground. The fight was caught on video and spread quickly within the company and beyond, becoming a media spectacle. The City Development Authority, worried about safety and project delays, stepped in with an official warning: unless the two reconciled and found common ground, the project would be halted indefinitely. Facing immense pressure from the board and government regulators, Junaid reluctantly agreed to a mediation session. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with unresolved anger and resentment. Both men sat across from each other, forced to listen, to speak, and, most difficult of all, to understand. The mediator guided the conversation toward the core issues: safety, deadlines, leadership, and respect. Slowly, grudgingly, the walls between them began to crack. In an effort to rebuild trust and see things from a different perspective, Junaid was compelled to spend a full day on site, not as the CEO issuing commands from the comfort of his office, but as an observer embedded in the daily realities of the workers. From dawn, he shadowed the crew, noting their rhythms, their concerns, their skillful labor. Riaz was no lazy manager, he was a guardian of the team's safety and well-being, a leader who earned his crew's respect by sharing their burdens and demanding excellence. As the sun set, Junaid's eyes fell on a welder, a middle-aged man, weathered but focused, who paused in the stifling heat to wipe sweat from his brow and then carefully rechecked the alignment of a steel beam before letting the torch flame meet it. That moment crystallized something deep inside Junaid. The man's diligence, the collective effort, the risks taken daily, they were the true foundation of the project, far more critical than any deadline or profit margin. The CEO realized his approach needed to shift, not just for the project's success, but for the respect and safety of everyone involved. Chapter 2, Foundations of Trust. The next morning, the atmosphere at the site was palpably different. Junaid arrived early, not with a clipboard or a list of orders, but with a willingness to listen and learn. He found Riaz already there, pacing the blueprints spread out on a makeshift table. The two men exchanged a nod, a silent truce acknowledging the fragile but genuine shift in their relationship. Junaid began engaging with the workers, asking questions about their processes, their challenges, and their safety concerns. He was surprised at the wealth of practical knowledge among the team, who had faced countless unforeseen issues with creativity and teamwork. He saw how Riaz wasn't just supervising from afar, he was the team's pillar, mediating disputes, addressing doubts, and encouraging precision. The respect Riaz commanded was not through fear or hierarchy but through earned trust. Riaz, for his part, was initially wary but gradually opened up. He shared his philosophy, that a strong structure isn't built on haste, but on patience and care. He explained how each beam, each weld, each calculation mattered because a single oversight could have catastrophic consequences. He confessed that the pressure to meet deadlines sometimes gnawed at him, but the safety of his crew and the integrity of the project came first. The day unfolded with several challenges: a minor equipment malfunction, a scheduling conflict, and an urgent material delivery. Instead of criticizing or blaming, Junaid witnessed firsthand how Riaz calmly managed each crisis, involving the team and solving problems collaboratively. Junaid's respect for the man grew, along with a dawning humility about his own leadership style. As evening approached, Junaid and Riaz stood side by side, overlooking the skeletal frame of the building that was slowly taking shape. The city lights flickered beyond the horizon, a symbol of progress and promise. Junaid broke the silence, expressing gratitude for Riaz's dedication and insight. He acknowledged his past mistakes, his impatience and failure to appreciate the complexity of the work on the ground. Riaz, too, softened, admitting that he had sometimes been inflexible and resistant to new ideas. They agreed to work together more closely, balancing speed with safety, innovation with tradition. This newfound partnership breathed new life into the project. Workers felt renewed confidence, the board relaxed, and regulators lifted some of their restrictions. But beyond the site, Junaid sensed something more profound had changed. His understanding of leadership evolved from commanding and controlling to listening and empowering. He saw that real progress required a foundation not just of steel and concrete, but of trust and respect between people. Chapter 3, Shifting Ground. Weeks passed, and the construction progressed steadily. The project's momentum shifted, fueled by a cohesive team led by two men who had bridged a seemingly unbridgeable divide. Junaid and Riaz had become partners in every sense, blending vision with pragmatism, ambition with caution. One late evening, as the sun dipped low, Junaid lingered on the site alone. He watched the crew wrap up their day, the welder he had noticed before, the crane operators, the engineers, all focused, proud, and connected. He recalled the first days when he had seen the site as merely a means to an end, a line item on a balance sheet. Now, it felt like a living organism, each person a vital part of the whole. The welder paused once again, wiping sweat and double-checking his work. Junaid felt a swell of emotion, admiration, respect, and a quiet sense of responsibility. He understood that the project was about more than buildings, it was about people, their dreams, their safety, and their livelihoods. The CEO's role was not just to drive profits but to nurture those human foundations. In the following weeks, the project continued without major setbacks. The media, initially fixated on the conflict, began to tell a new story, a story of collaboration, leadership growth, and a company learning from its mistakes. Junaid spoke openly in interviews about the importance of humility and listening. Riaz was recognized not just as a skilled manager but as a leader who had saved the project and, perhaps, changed the company's culture. The City Development Authority lifted its warnings, and the board's confidence returned. But the most lasting change was internal. Junaid implemented regular site visits for all executives, ensuring that decisions were grounded in reality. He encouraged open communication channels between management and workers, fostering mutual respect. The complex itself, when completed, stood not only as a testament to architectural prowess but as a symbol of human resilience and cooperation. It embodied the idea that shifting ground, whether literal or metaphorical, requires adaptation, empathy, and the courage to change. Junaid and Riaz, once adversaries, had become catalysts for transformation, proving that true leadership is about building bridges, not walls. And in the glow of that final weld, beneath the steel skeleton rising to the sky, the city found not just a new landmark, but a new story, one of trust, growth, and shifting ground. Weeks passed, and the desert winds softened, no longer howling with the menace they once carried. At the remote veterinary outpost, Shaheen, once a shadow of himself, now stood on his own legs beneath a shaded canopy. The team had worked tirelessly, rotating shifts to ensure he was fed, hydrated, and gradually strengthened. His eyes, once dim with exhaustion, now sparkled with a quiet resilience. Word of the miraculous camel rescue had spread across nearby towns and nomadic tribes, drawing occasional visitors who brought dates, hay, and quiet prayers. But through it all, Shaheen remained calm, his presence both majestic and solemn, like a desert spirit reborn. One morning, as the sun rose like molten gold over the dunes, the rescue team gathered for his release. Rafiq gave a silent nod, clipboard tucked under his arm, while Majid loaded the last crate of supplies into the transport trailer. Ikram, ever the emotional core of the crew, knelt beside Shaheen and gently touched his forehead. "You've got the soul of a warrior," he whispered. "But warriors don't belong in cages." With a rope tied loosely to his halter, Shaheen stepped into the open trailer without hesitation, the desert stretching out before him as if it had been waiting. The journey back to his original migration route was long and winding, but not once did he falter. With every mile, his strength returned, muscles rippling beneath golden fur that had once sagged with weakness. They reached a wide canyon near the edge of the desert, an area known to host migrating camel herds. The team stopped the vehicle, and the gates were unlatched. Shaheen stood still for a moment, taking in the open land, ears twitching at the distant sounds of grunts and footfalls echoing in the valley. Then, slowly, he stepped forward, the sand familiar beneath his hooves, the wind now a gentle guide. The team stood back, watching silently. From over a ridge, a group of camels emerged, Shaheen's old herd. There was no galloping reunion, no cinematic charge. Just a quiet moment as the leader of the herd walked toward him and paused, recognizing the scent, the eyes, the survivor. One by one, the others followed, forming a semicircle around him, as if welcoming him back into the fold without question. Ikram wiped his eyes with the edge of his scarf. He found his way home. Rafiq patted him on the back, and even Majid gave a slow nod of approval. As the camels turned and began to move, Shaheen took one last look at the team before joining them, his steps steady, his spirit restored. The golden light wrapped around his silhouette as he disappeared into the dunes, no longer a symbol of loss but of endurance. In the silence that followed, only the wind spoke, carrying with it the story of a silent nomad, a rescue born of compassion, and a journey that stitched life back into the very heart of the